Representatives Alyssa Bonini, please stand, wave to everyone, and Emily Akutagawa. And our treasurer, who we owe all of our lives to, Nshala. It is impossible to introduce our next speaker in just a few words because she's simply done a little bit of everything. Malia Akutagawa serves as Assistant Professor of Law with both the University of Hawaii at Manoa's William S. Richardson School of Law and Hawaii Inuviakea's School of Hawaiian Knowledge. She has conducted seaweed aquaculture extension work on the island of Molokai for
and deficit and it's a very impoverished way of looking. The approach of our kupuna was so different. It was, how can I have plenty? How can I have abundance? How can I have moana for the people so that they can flourish? And how can I create enough resources? And how can we all be abundant and thriving together? And there's something inside of us, the seeds are planted inside of us, and we just have to let it cool. We just have to bring it forth, bring our very best forth and let it bear fruit. And that's really what this is about. And it's an exciting time for Hawaiians and indigenous people around the world because they held that knowledge. They've been holding that seed this whole time. And the rest of the world is looking to us and saying, what can we do? How can we nourish and nurture this seed and plant it and give it life and bring beauty back into this world? And it rests on the knowledge of our kupuna and all that knowledge that is embedded in us and in our So we were disenfranchised and we weren't able to make responsible decisions for our own island. And in the face of that, we innovated and we resisted. Kamalo is a place where every scar on my body knows this land intimately, and this is where I learned how to spearfish, lay net, gather clams, and opai, which is baby shrimp. I mean, not baby shrimp, it's native shrimp, but it's really small. So many of the things that I learned came from this place, Kamalo. And I wanted to share this phrase with you by David Malo. And he talks about what is aina versus moku. So aina, moku is first a piece of land surrounded by water. But aina is land that is inhabited by people. And so what's critical about this understanding is a lot of times when we look at the land, we separate ourselves out of it. And people often look at nature and say, man is a pestilence upon the land. The land will do better without humans. But when you talk to indigenous people, they see themselves as part of the land. You can't separate that off. And so there's this partnership, this understanding that we have relationship to the land. And if we see that we're part of it, then land becomes family. And the whole conversation about, you know, preserving the environment changes when that's your family. Because you will protect what you love, and you will give your life for that land. So, I wanted to share with you some statistics. There was a Kamehameha Schools study, and they interviewed children who were Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian, and those who are not Native Hawaiian, just to give you a sense of how Hawaiians look at the Aina. So Aina is a living sacred being that I should malama. When they asked Hawaiian students, 80% of them said that statement resonated with them, while 55% non-Hawaiians said it resonated with them. Another statement, the land and I are one, so that when the land is damaged, I am injured. 62% said, yes, it means something to me as a Native Hawaiian, versus 30% of non-Hawaiian students. So when the land is injured, it really causes a lot of trauma to Native Hawaiians. So I just wanted to share this National Geographic picture. I just remember my dad having a lot of meetings and all these protest signs being painted and all the adults talking strategy. And so I was born in this movement of Aloha Aina in the 70s. So that's me, the girl with the red sweater, marching. My dad woke me up at 5 in the morning and said, get your shoes on. And so, you know, having these impressions in my life were really significant and kind of guided me in the way of not forgetting where I come from. And, you know, my whole career path was already chosen for me to be an attorney. You know, and directly across from us was Kaho'olawe, this little tiny island. It's like a sliver on the horizon. And we started, I remember hearing the bombs and the land would shake, even on Molokai, you could feel the shaking. And it was utilized for Navy military exercises. And Georgetown was sort of like our Martin Luther King of the Hawaiian movement. And he said, Kaho'olawe can teach the rest of the world Aloha Aina and save us from becoming evolutionary dropouts. And just a few years ago, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of stopping the bombing at Kaho'olawe. I like to quote Uncle Walter Riddy, who was one of the main activists on Molokai, and he was part of the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana. You know, they were occupying the island while bombs were being dropped, so this guy is really serious, and he really has been a mentor to me. He said before there was sustainability, there was Aloha Aina. And embedded in the word sustainability is Aina. So my nonprofit that I founded is called Sustainable Molokai. We need to stay true to our values of that relationship, reciprocal relationship. Also want to share with you another place where I'm from, the second part of my childhood. I spent with my grandmother, and this is the Ahupua of Walapu'e. And Professor Dr. Beamer, Kamana Beamer, he's a cartographer and a Hawaiian Studies professor, my colleague, and he talks about these palena, that these are markers on the land that are embedded within the knowledge of the people that live there. And he quotes, I quote from his book, indigenous people are people of place, and the nature of place is embedded in their language. The physical, cognitive, and emotional orientation of the people is a kind of map that they carry in their heads and transfer from generation to generation. So this land, I've walked all the lands, all this area, and played in the streams and visited different heiau, ancient Hawaiian temples on the land that extend into the sea. And it's less than a mile long, but it means so much to me. And whenever you ask someone who lives in Hawaii where they're from, they'll tell you first they're Ahupua'a. So this message will self-destruct after I tell it to you in 5 seconds. Because I'm going to show you my fishing grounds and kind of give you, and fishermen know I can tell their fishing grounds. So message will self-destruct. I'll put one of those men in black things on the Okay. So just to kind of explain Palena. So this is Walapu'e Fish Pond. My grandma's place is right here. This is the elementary school I grew up, went to school at. We walked on this fishing trail. We walked along this fish pond, Walapu'e. And then we stop at the end of the fish pond and we don't go further. And we go out here and we dive along the reef. And the reefs have different names. The last place we go is this kind of blue hole area, and that's called Wakas. And then we reach this next fish pond, and we don't go past that because that's not our fishing grounds. And then all along here, my grandmother collected limu or seaweed and went crabbing, and I would do that with her. And then we'd go home. And it wasn't like my dad said, no, this is the boundary of your Ahupua'a, and you cannot pass this area. It was just true daily practice that we just knew the boundaries of our place. And so, under the Kingdom of Hawaii, our maps reflect that kind of knowledge, intimate knowledge of our palena. So this is a map of Maui and all the different Ahupua'a, different land divisions. Versus when you look at colonial mapping, does this represent natural features in the land or any kind of indigenous understanding? I haven't consulted the Native American tribes from this area, but I can say confidently that this is probably not their indigenous So this is another map too of the different boundaries within the Ahupua'a. So it really reflects on what my colleague, Dr. Beamer, calls Oiwi agency, or Hawaiians making decisions for themselves and keeping to the customary knowledge. This is a wind map. So Hawaii, we have very steady trade winds because of our location, just above the equator and this Coriolis effect. So I remember when I had moved to Washington State for college, I said, man, these winds are really pupule, they're very crazy. One time they're coming from this way, and next time they're coming from this way, there's no rhyme or reason. But I realized I knew my winds without really knowing their names. So this is the names of all the winds on Oahu. And Dr. Beamer talks about, there's a wind called, they're also named of rains as well. So he talks about the rain Tuahine of Manoa, where the University of Hawaii is located. And there's a rain exclusive to Palolo, which is like a Ahupua'a next, and it's called Lililehua. He said that knowledge of palena would enable a person to know which of the two rains one was experiencing. So embedded in the people is a sort of mental map. Now, how did that happen? It really was It was a way of how Hawaiians governed themselves and managed the land. So this is the late Kumujan Ka'imikawa, and he was a kumuhula, a teacher of hula, and he held all the stories, the ancient stories of Mo'olelo of Molokai. And so he encouraged us to restore this council, this ahakiole. And how he explains it is, there's the cordage of the olona bark, the olona tree. Each strand is called an aho. But when you weave the expertise of many people who have understanding of fishing, who have understanding of water management, who knows the names of the winds and the names of the rains, all of these people who have that ike, that understanding, that knowledge, their knowledge is woven, their separate aho strands are woven together to create an aha. So that's what aha means, like a weaving of these expertise. So aha is a council. And then kiole is a metaphor for the iole. These are baby fish or pua that were so numerous that they formed dark clouds that shrouded the coastline. And they said the population, the people was like that, reflecting that abundance. So that's what Ahakiole means, the People's Council. And there's a saying only known on Molokai, and it's Aya na kai po'olo ulo ulo Molokai. There are the turbulent waters of Molokai. So these fish ponds, they were constructed along the shoreline and surrounding reefs, and they were made by thousands of Native Hawaiians in ancient times. Some are like 600 years old, even 1,000 years old. And the turbulent seas describes how abundant the fish were within these ponds as compared to the sea outside. So the sea outside may be tranquil, but the fish ponds may be just turbulent. And I never quite understood that until I actually experienced that in real life. And there was my great-grandmother, Ha'aheo, who my middle name, I'm named after her. When she was being interviewed, they asked her, how much fish are in the fish ponds? And she said, there's so much. I just kick with my feet, and I grab with my hand whatever I want to eat. And I'm like, I can't imagine that. But one night I was driving home from a wedding, and on Molokai we have 7,000 people and one road, no traffic lights, nothing. So you can be the only guy on the road and 5 cars in a row, that's traffic. Like what's going on there? 5 cars. So I was driving at 10 o'clock at night, pitch black, and I just heard this like cacophony, this kind of sound, like I was in the middle of an arena. And so I got a little bit scared, what's going on? And it's not raining, there's nothing like pelting the roof of my car, what is that? But as I turned the corner of this Kupeke fish pond, my headlights flashed on the pond, and there are literally millions of fish in the pond, and they were spawning, and they were like earthworms. And they were making that kind of rattling sound. And I was so awestruck and kind of afraid of seeing that at 10 o'clock at night. But it shifted my consciousness immediately, and I began to understand what is true sustainability. So if you remember the film, I'm saying, the way we look at sustainability is like we're on the edge of this cliff. It's like, how much more steps did I take till I fall off? So, when we talk about the climate crisis and all these things, polluting of our waters, we are in crisis. And therefore, we have to be sustainable. But when I thought of the fish pond, and I thought of my great-grandmother's words, and I thought of how our kupuna, how our elders speak, they'll invite any stranger into their house, and they say, come eat. There's plenty. And then, so gracious, so much aloha. And it's because if every day of your life you've seen abundance, you wouldn't hoard, you wouldn't, you wouldn't say this is mine, not yours. I gotta take care of myself. If there's the last fish, I'm gonna take it. Because somebody else will. That would not even be in your mindset. So then your world would be so abundant, and you would welcome anyone in your life. Your world you would embrace everyone. And so if you think of building a world where there's more than enough, where no one is struggling, and that's what sustainability is, I think you're going to be asking more empowering questions, and you're going to be coming up with more empowering solutions. So I wanted to share with you what the councils utilize as their ethics or realms of decision making. And this was shared by Kumu John and shared with one of his students, Dr. Kavika Winter. And Dr. Winter was so gracious in sharing this with me. So the 8 realms, one begins with Moana Nui Akea, the farthest out to sea or along the ocean's horizon one could perceive from atop the highest vantage point in one's area. So their decision any decision they had to make had to account for Moana Nui Akea. So from your highest mountain looking out to the horizon and beyond, you have to have cared for that. And the decisions you made had to care for that. Kahakai Pepeao, where the high tide is to where the lepo or the soil starts. This is typically the splash zone where the crab, limu, seaweed, pihi, limpids may be located. Sea cliffs or a gentle shoreline dotted with coastal strand of vegetation. Sands where turtles and seabirds nest, or where extensive sand dunes are located. Mauka, the point where the soil starts to the top of the mountain. Namuliwai, all the sources of fresh water, ground, artesian water, rivers, streams, springs, including springs along the coastline that mix with seawater. So measure fracking with that. What would the decision be? Kalevamani, everything above the land, the air, the sky, the clouds, the birds, the rainbows. Think of Clean Air Act. There's certain amounts you can pollute the air. Would it stand up? I mean, if the birds are gonna die, if you're not gonna see any more rainbows, forget it. No car exhaust, no factory. Kanaka Honua, the natural resource is important to sustain people. However, the management is based on providing for the benefit of the resources themselves rather than from the standpoint of how they serve people. Papahe Lorona, knowledge and intellect that is a valuable resource to be respected, maintained, and managed properly. This is the knowledge of the kahuna. These are our experts and our priests, the astronomers, the healers, and other carriers of ike or knowledge. Ke'i'i'i, elements that maintain the sanctity or sacredness of certain places. So all these realms had to be accounted for and measured when making decisions. And what happened with these Aha councils, where what they did was they decided to divide the land among moku, or regions or districts. So this is a map of Oahu Island, and these are the moku. So as a population began to grow and flourish, as Aina Momona means fat land, wealthy land. As Aina Momona occurred, and that was a measurement, more than enough, abundance. They had to further divide their moku into ahupua'a, so smaller land divisions. And there were konohiki, or managers that managed these ahupua'a. So this is kind of some rough definitions of ahupua'a. What they're called conventionally in Hawaii are watersheds, but that's an oversimplification. So they're not all watersheds, but typically a standard ahupua'a runs from the sea to the mountains and contains a sea fishery and beach, a stretch of open cultivable land, and higher up to its forests. Inland and shore fish ponds were located within its boundaries. That's roughly what an ahupua'a is. So I showed you my ahupua'a. So that was roughly from mountain to sea. And then there were certain realms within the ahupua'a that were important, or what Dr. Winters called vital cultural zones. So the Vau'akua is the realm of the gods. And people didn't really touch that unless they were kiamanu or bird catchers. They would collect feathers and make these feather capes for the chiefs. And once in a while they would gather the koa to create canoes, the koa wood. But really they left the upper mountain forest intact and pristine. And we're finding out now that that's essential in carrying the nutrients, capturing the rain cloud, all of those things, and creating this sponge on the land. Also, part of that is the Vaunahele. It's the rainforest where the giant trees and tree ferns grow under almost perpetual cloud and rain. And rarely humans access this area. And there's the Vaula'au. Vaula'au was kind of our food forest, so a lot of times, only now science is kind of catching up and realizing that indigenous cultures were actually designing their forests. What looked like a natural forest, they're finding, certain types of tree crops for food and for building materials that are designed in succession to look like a real forest. And so we're learning that, this traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge has been applied up in the forest in areas. So this was called Vaula'au. And then Vaukanaka, the realm of the people, this is where taro terraces were formed. So we slowed the path of the water and carried nutrients down, and there was a Y or irrigation ditches that led through these taro patches and returned back to the stream, providing nutrients that fed fish ponds, which were constructed around underwater springs. And so the land was mumona, aina mumona, very abundant. And even within the fisheries, the nearshore fisheries, it was cultivated like gardens. So I interviewed a number of people on Molokai as part of this watershed management project. And one of the things that was shared with me was that the certain reef patches have names of women, and one can trace their line matrilineally to their ancestor that had an ocean garden. So, and then I heard stories of what's called manini houses. Manini is a type of fish that kind of looks like a zebra. It's striped. And it's my grandma's favorite fish, so I'm always catching manini for her. And basically, it's a construction of like an ahu, a pile of stones that are constructed so that the waves don't break them down, but provides enough orifices for the fish to go in. And it was chiefly a woman's garden. And so whenever predator fish were around, the manini would go dash into these manini houses. And when the tide would get a little low, the women would go out and lift the stone butt and grab with their hand the fish. And I actually saw one of these manini houses without realizing someone had constructed it, but I thought, wow, I never saw this. Let me go look, and I saw these two fat manini in there, and I said, oh, Grandma's gonna be happy. So I lifted the stone and I poked the two fish, and and brought it home for grandma. And then later on I found out, wow, it was, constructed by hand. So really we were, mahi ai o ka aina me ke kai, we were farmers of land and seed. And I just wanted to show you one of our fish ponds. I mean, when I would drive to work, I saw at least 30 fish ponds during a 30-minute drive. And I mean, they're everywhere. And these children, they're growing limu ovo, and this is about at least 1,000-pound harvest of seaweed from the fish pond. And I wanted to say something about the fish pond. So these ponds were constructed hundreds of years ago, and they carry the stones that are from the north side of the island. And this is a salt side of the island, a more protected area. So it's a 10-mile stretch over the mountain and down steep sea cliff. And the story is that there were 7 people deep, human chain over 10 miles long, going up the mountain, down the steep sea cliff. And so the mana, or the life force, that power, is located, it still remains in the stones that were passed hand by hand to create these fish ponds. And I used to think a lot about these fish ponds and why did our ancestors build them. And one thing as you gain a sensitivity to the land and the ancient peoples that walked that land, you can kind of tap into that. And so I kept asking these questions, and then one day this vision came to me, and the kupuna, the ancestors showed me what was their thinking. And their thinking was, we need to, as our population is growing, we have to look at not overfishing our reefs. And so how we're going to do that? Well, we have to change our behavior. We have to look at what kinds of fish we're eating. There's all this spring water, and there's this herbivorous fish that only eat algae. If we select for this kind of fish, then there will be less pressure on the predator fish that, pound for pound is, metabolically inefficient to eat a predator fish versus an herbivorous fish. So they said, okay, we'll build these fish ponds, and we'll study the habits of this herbivorous fish, and we'll create an ecosystem for them where they'll never want to leave. And so basically these fish ponds are built around springs where this type of limu and algae grow, algal mats grow, and that's where the fish feed, and they get really fat, and they never want to leave. And there's an opening, called makaha. There's these, they have a gate system, and so they would make these slats, and so the baby fish would go through there, but then they'd get fat, and they couldn't go out the slats. And then if you're a manager of even like a 500-acre pond, you only needed one guy, because it was built along the tidal fluctuations. So fish will always kind of go swim against the current, and aerate their gills, and they'll catch detritus along the way. So the Hawaiians do this. So they said, well, I can just go stand at the makaha, and when the tide changes, and I'll harvest right there. So you can just drop the net right there. And you can monitor the health of your fish, because they'll be trying to go swim against the current as a tide is coming in, or they'll swim, they'll try to come in the pond as the tide's going out. So that's how our kupuna managed. It made work really easy. But as I see this hundreds of years later, and I know that we can just put the stone back on the walls if they fell down, and be back in business and feeding people, I think of what kind of thought process did it take for our kupuna to be building this? They had to be thinking about not just themselves, but their mo'opuna, their grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren, hundreds of years in the future. They have to have that love for us, to provide for us too. You know, and when that, I forget his name, but the youth rapper and his siblings, you know, really it was an indictment on us, you know, as adults. You've left a world that is worse for us. You know, and so when I talked to in the AHA Council, they said, we have to think about our mo'opuna not yet born. Because I want our mo'opuna to look back at us and say, you know, and convict us and say, they left a world worse for us. You know, I have a heritage where I can look at my kupuna and say, man, I love you. I'm proud to be part of you. And so that's the way we need to be thinking of mo'opuna not yet born. And if we malama, if we take care of the land, it'll take care of us. You know, we have to make that choice. So here you got, momono, or you got, havoc, you got damage, you got landslides when you deforest your land. So it's up to us, and we can make our decisions now. And then, part of that is that management. So I want to kind of give you tools of how we manage, and maybe it can be translated to what we do around the world, or apply the same kind of ethic. So there were komuniki that were really doing what's adaptive management. They had a very intimate understanding of their ahupua'a, and they made decisions. They regulated when fish could be harvested, what spawning cycles, they followed the spawning cycles and made sure they didn't harvest during their spawning time. And so we had a very strict kapu system that in ancient times resulted in death if you defied it. Nowadays we have environmental crimes and they're just a slap on the hand. So we have a modern day konohiki on Komak, in 1993, we're seeing diminishment in the fish, and Uncle Mac said, I need you guys to introduce a new law that will protect subsistence fishing and look at traditional management of our local fisheries. So we were successful in getting that legislation passed. So, Uncle Matt, it's been like 20 years since he's been taking care of this place on the northwest coastline of Molokai called Mo'omomi. And I asked him, how do you manage, Uncle? Like, what's your methodology? And he said, first I start with the fish that I like to eat. Like that makes sense. Why would you study, damsel fish that you don't eat? Okay, so you study the fish you like to eat. Then I study what they eat, so alimu or a type of seaweed. So this is, what he does is he looks at the seaweed that is in his area. When he cuts the fish, he looks at what they're eating. And he said, alimu that's not there anymore in the environment tells me something about everything else that relies on the alimu. It tells me about what's happening along the entire coastline. It's important that we pay attention to all these little things. So you'll see him walking the coastline and he'll just be looking at limu, at seaweed, and he'll know exactly what's feeding, what's not feeding, what population is down, what population may be up. And then he knows all the spawning cycles of the fish according to the moon phase and the cycle. So, and then he has these mental maps, like he'll look at the sand and whether the waves have piled the sand up on the shore. And there's certain fish that like clean reef holes to spawn. So he's like, oh, okay, this fish is spawning right now. And then he'll look and see if they are spawning. And if they aren't, then that's an anomaly. And so he'll try to reason, okay, what's going on in the environment. So right now he's noticing the effects of climate change where the sand is shifting in different ways, the currents are different. So I asked him, why is that important, Uncle? And he said, well, you know, less sand now on the beach, there's more rocks exposed. The turtles, the sea turtles are not going to come in, so where are they going now? And then he said there's moisture in the sand, and he can check the moisture in the sand to see if the sand crab is good enough for sand crabs. So, I mean, I'm like, wow, Uncle. I wouldn't even think about that, you know. And then I'm hearing from conservationists, just Malka or just inland of that area. There's native seabirds, and the population has increased because now there's more resources in the area, and then so there's more replenishment of the land too from the feces of the birds and all these things. And so we're seeing abundance from the ocean occurring inland. And so they studied similar areas within the Hawaiian Islands. They just looked at biomass. And so what this graph is showing is this is Mo'omomi, and this is what traditional management looks like, more fish biomass, as compared to other areas that were either left alone, like one of them is a marine life conservation district. So even areas that were just left alone, humans are a pestilence, just keep them out there, the resources will come back. They still have less biomass than when you intentionally manage and you allow. So that says something. So Uncle, you know, he's a funny guy. I mean, he looks like a shark, and he says very little words. But when he says it like kind of packs a punch. So I asked him, what do you think about scientists? You know, so I read this book, Sacred Ecology, and Fikret Berkey's, and he says, traditional knowledge is often perceived as non-science because this way of knowing often employs non-standardized methods which are not transparent in the same way as Western science and is therefore easily dismissed. Indigenous knowledge is treated as a challenge to the dominant positive reductionist paradigm in Western science. The sources of conflict between practitioners of Western science and traditional science often have to do with power relationships between Western experts and Aboriginal experts who have different political agendas and who relate in different ways to the resources in question. So this was a pilot project, and what was supposed to come out of this pilot project was traditional rules of management, but the State Department of Land and Natural Resources felt a little threatened by the way Uncle Mac managed the ocean and didn't understand his science. So they let the project sunset without moving forward with the administrative rules. So we've had challenges in that we have this legislation in place, but the DNR hasn't necessarily been implementing it until just last year, 20 years after the legislation, where Hawaii was able to get designation. But Uncle Matthew says, you know, I work a lot with scientists. They come around for the Kodak moments. Me, I'm here every day. And I said, what do you mean by Kodak moments, Uncle? He said, oh, you know, they'll be at Transect, they'll come maybe quarterly, they'll do some, you know, abundance diversity study, and then they will print it out in some journal, scientific journal, and say, I know everything there is to know about moment now. So they like to take their Kodak pictures, but me, I'm here every day. And so he was telling me this scientists came and they wanted to see the fish abundance, so they made a transit, and Uncle had taken them to some rich fishing area in Mo'omomi. And there was so much fish, the guy couldn't count it. And he was like, this is impossible, I can't count. You know, like the fish was swimming all around him, you know. And then Uncle was laughing and said, said, yeah, I was wondering how he was going to do this. And then, then he talked about OPE, like, he went out with this group and counted OPE, not on Momi, but this other place. And then he said, man, if you gotta count the OPE, these are like limpets, so one shell mollusk that cling to the rocks in the splash zone, and they're a delicacy in Hawaii. So if you can actually count the OPE, there's probably not enough, So I'm like, well, how much OPE is that? Like, I don't bother counting, this is way too much. So that's what you gotta be managing to, where it's so much you can't count already, forget it. So, Hawaii is looking at ways to incorporate some of this ahupua'a management, but it's really on paper only. But if we really look to indigenous knowledge and actually implement it, it would be amazing. But one of the things that the state passed is the statewide Ahamuku Council, and it was based loosely on what I told you the Ahakiole is about. And it's being implemented on different islands, but Molokai is really kind of ahead of the game in doing that. So just want to share one more project, and this is the watershed management project. So typically they do fencing of the upper pristine area of the Ahupua'a to preserve the rain cloud in the native rainforest. And so they did this in Kamalo, where I'm from, but there are other consequences. The ungulates, the deer in the boat started to migrate where they're further east where there was no fence and started to further degrade the land. So then people are kind of like, well, I don't know if we want to just do a fence. It's a tool, but really, watershed is not just the upper parts of the Ahupua'a. We traditionally manage from Auka to Makai, from mountain to sea. So the Manae community said we want Ahupua'a scale of planning. And we want to be part of this, not just conservationists that provide a fence line across all of the east end. So what I did was I teach Native Hawaiian rights clinic. And so I got my law students to help the community and interview them and document their uses. So we did mapping, and we asked them to provide areas that were important for fishing, hunting, ocean gathering, sacred sites, streams, trails, all of that. And then we also did honoring the Kanawai law. So we looked at our unique laws in Hawaii, and we basically said, hey, it's actually connected to your ahupua'a and the use of your lands. And so there's certain unique jurisprudence and statutory and constitutional laws that basically look to Hawaiian custom as the standard for our judicial decisions, and then as the standard of what we protect. And they go back all the way to the ancient times. This Hua'aina, these are ahupua'a tenants. They had access from Mauka to Makai, from mountain to sea, and their ahupua'a to gather these enumerated items like firewood, house timber, aho cord, that's for thatch. That's for binding your materials together to make your house or make your fishing nets. Tea leaf, drinking water, running water, and travel freely up on the roads. So this has also been affirmed in our Judiciary Act, which survived all the way to statehood, which looks to Hawaiian custom and usage as the standard above English and American common law. And judicial interpretations are based on what's called kama'aina expertise, and that's the expertise of those who live on the land. So this is the Asher case, and it had to do with a wording in a deed, Makekai, which is along the shoreline. And this person wanted to have his own private beach. And so he got a surveyor to basically say, yeah, you own the whole beach, we're gonna base it on, I think, the high water mark or something like that. But the Hawaii Supreme Court based their decision on kama'aina knowledge. So that's the old timer. What does makekai mean along the shore? Well, it's like, where I would park my canoe, and where would you park your canoe? I park it at the vegetation line. I don't want my canoe to get washed out. And so that's why in Hawaii, all beaches are public, not private, all the way up to the vegetation line. And our state constitution reaffirms these rights. And also it affirms these trails that are utilized for access from Mauka to Makai and laterally along different ahupua. And so when we interviewed the people, we found that a lot of these trails go all the way to the south side, from the south side all the way to the north side. So we realized that we had to preserve these trails for access. And there were a lot of cultural and historic sites that were identified. Even this was one area that was threatened where large landowner refused to be part of the watershed partnership. And so this area, a lot of people were concerned about the historic sites as well as the falling of the streams, because a lot of them only have county water, so they rely 100% on stream water for domestic and agricultural purposes. So, taking the ethics of the AHA Council, we had to make sure that wherever the fence would be laid, we had to make sure that the deer and the goat wouldn't migrate into other areas. So we cannot do harm to others just because we want to preserve a certain area. So our decisions have to take into account all these things. We asked too, like, how important is subsistence to you, and we found that every single ahupua'a, so within a 16-mile stretch of land, there were 43 ahupua'a. Some of these ahupua'a are like just thin, and they basically, showed how abundant these lands were. They were self-sufficient, so people who live, or who I know, who live within that ahupua'a, for the most part, all their resources were gathered for whatever they needed was from their ahupua'a. So imagine that these narrow strips of land fed thousands of people. And so we asked, how important is it? And we found every single ahupua'a was important. And we asked, what is the state of your resources? And so they were saying that, because of poor land practices above, there was a lot of siltation in the fish ponds below and along the reefs. And one person said, these invasive plants, these introduced plants, he said they're selfish. They don't let anything else grow under them. And so he called them these ilikea, or these foreign plants. And he talked about how so there's fishing shrines along the inland, and the fishermen use them as markers for their secret fishing spots. And so they provide a line of sight. So he was saying, because of this introduction of foreign plants and ranching and the trampling of their koa, their fishing shrines, they weren't able to provide a line of sight in the ocean where their fishing grounds are. And so he told me, like, to me it was amazing. Like, think of a clothesline. So you got one post, say, on the mountain, and you get one post in the ocean. So they would utilize the koa, the fishing shrine, as a line of sight. And then this person told me his grandfather would kind of, he he would count the intervals of waves, the seconds. So like 5 seconds, 7 seconds, 3 seconds. You know, the intervals are longer the farther you out from shore. They're shorter the closer you are to shore. And he could calibrate along that spectrum of the clothesline where to drop anchor. And so you'd say, okay, we're 4 seconds, okay, drop anchor. And so if you don't take care of the land on all of it and you lose some of this palena, these boundaries or these markers on the land, then it affects your practice and your ability to move and care for these places. You know, and the state constitution also protects the public trust for present and future generations, our natural resources. And how that's played out is the Waihole water case. Hawaii has one of the strongest public trust doctrines in the United States. And so one of the things that they look at is, you know, these developers were saying, if you let the water return to the stream and enter the ocean, that's waste. And the court said that's not waste. Preserving enough water in the streams for our aquatic life and native species is part of the public trust, and so we have to protect that. Retention of waters in their natural state, that's not waste. And it also introduced the precautionary principle, basically saying we're not going to wait for scientific certainty to make a decision. We're going to err on the side of caution. So, you know, what was being argued by developers was to continue to divert the water was that you have no proof that taking this water causes any harm. And basically the Supreme Court said this is a constitutional mandate, and therefore we have stricter policy here. And so we're going to employ a precautionary principle to avoid potential environmental degradation. And then further cases like the Waiolo case on Molokai, you know, people were interviewed as to, okay, if we issue a water use permit that takes groundwater, then the state also has an affirmative duty to protect Native Hawaiian traditional customary rights that may be affected by the water. Seaweed grounds, fishing grounds, that sort of thing. I see Anna standing at the corners, I better hurry up. So they showed us the degradation of the resources, you know, the hihiwai, which is a water snail that is, oh God, so delicious. Opo, and how the different, how the land practices above was affecting the stream. So we had to look at these rights, look at the practices, and put in this Ahupua'a plan, all these things to protect. And then we're looking at mo'olelo, looking at oral history about different practices, and does it allow for an expansion of customary understandings. And basically what we did was base it on these ohana values. If they follow these ethics, you know, and if culture is living and evolving, not just sitting on a museum shelf, then if we follow these ethics, and we can extrapolate from that whether this customary practice is indeed customary. And then we talked about our ice box, that these resources are like our ice box, our refrigerator. But we also, if the ice box is broken, then you know we have to fix that first. So we talked about not just accessing the resources, but more long taking care of these resources so that present and future generations could be taken care of. And so the community came up with their own plan of how they were going to on the ahupua'as. So this is like one graph of what they were going to do from Mauka to Makai. And some said lower the fence, because why are we limiting ourselves to the remnant forest? We need to lower the fence and bring back the lower forest. and we need to be restoring our fish ponds because we are farmers of land and sea. So this is some of the fish pond restoration work my community has done. And then we need to incorporate hunters in as part of the conservation plan as well because they know the land intimately. And so we said part of the licensing program should include conservation and traditional management. And then we could be innovative by looking at our ancient technologies and applying it to land. So this is, I think this is the second to last slide. So basically this is a he'e or octopus, and this is a way of fishing where you set your line out kind of like the tentacle of the two tentacles of the he'e, and you trap them in the head, the po'o of the he'e. So he said, why not we do community hunting, and we set up 10-meter stakes, and then we put cargo net, and we'll frighten the animals up and catch them in the net. And that was a way of community managing their own resources and bringing the ungulates down and sharing the meat with the rest of the community. So there are ways to look at indigenous knowledge, innovate for this modern time. And one final thing, so this is Halava, and scientists have carbon dated this area and found that this is the first place of habitation in Hawaii. So Halava, Uncle Pilipo Solitario says Halava, and it means enough, sufficiency. And you know, for Hawaiians, enough sufficiency is you don't just eat to survive, you eat till you're happy. So this, Halava tells me also something that my colleague Greg Chan talked about, that our ancestors came from other parts of Polynesia, sailed over thousands of miles using traditional navigation by stars and understanding the waves and the winds. And he said, who do you think were on the first canoe? Like, how did they choose? You know, so our class had to kind of think, well, what skills and all these sort of things, what was important. And what my colleague said is, you know, it's a lonely world for all of us, and we want to know if we can make a difference. And sometimes we feel paralyzed in making decisions, or we don't know if we have what it takes to bring it. And he said, but we have to realize that each one of us are the first guys on a canoe looking for that. And so my final thought is we have the ike, we have the knowledge, we have the mana, we have the power, and so we have to bring it. Because in some instance in our lives, we're the first guy on a canoe, and we're looking for this place called Hala, this place of sufficiency and abundance, and we can find it. That mana, that ike is within us. We just have to tap into that. And so sustainability for me is a message of hope. And we are central. We're not just central to the problems, we're central to the solution. And that's how we need to move forward. So mahalo. I wanted to thank Anne and the rest of the law students for working so hard putting this event together. And I really aloha and I appreciate that you can bring us all together to share ideas and to learn from each other. And I am feeling that we know that abundance and that love from you. So thank you so much.
To introduce our last but certainly not least, keynote speaker, please welcome to the stage Jen Gleason, staff attorney at ELAW, the Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide.
So I've had the great pleasure of participating in this conference since I was a law student 24 years ago. And every year I look forward to it, bringing everyone together, the energy, everything. But I've been sitting down here right now just feeling incredibly privileged and realizing what a privilege it is for us to sit and listen to the amazing stories that we all have to share with us. And Malia Akutagawa it was such a privilege to listen to her share with us her community and her experience, and I'm really honored to have been able to be here, so thank you very much. And as I said, I was a student organizing this at 1 year, so I know how hard these students have been working, and I really want to appreciate, and this might be our last moment to do that, as a group. So all of the work that the LAW students have been doing to bring us all together and create this incredible event for us. And I'm going to thank particularly Tori Wilder, who worked with us last summer and did incredible work and has helped us find opportunities for all of our partners to speak here at the conference this week. So thank you all very much. Now, it's my great privilege to be able to introduce to all of you my friend and colleague, Dr. Rugemeleza Nshala. Dr. Nshala graduated with a Bachelor's of Laws degree from the University of Dar es Salaam in 1993, the same year that I was graduating from the University of Oregon Law School. I feel like we sort of grew up together, but then he went and got a bunch of other degrees that are incredibly impressive. In 1994, I first met Dr. Nshala and his colleague Vincent Showry, who I'm sorry to say we've lost since then, and some of his friends who had just graduated from law school and knew the atrocities that were happening to the communities across Tanzania and knew that they had these skills to do something about it. And despite the fact that they knew that it was really unlikely that anyone was going to pay them to do this, that they needed to figure out how to use their new skills to defend communities who needed to be defended. So Dr. Nshala and his colleagues started the Lawyers Environmental Action Team, LEAT, in 1994. And to my knowledge, it's the first organization dedicated to public interest environmental law in East Africa, probably in East and Southern Africa. And they did it without any role models to help them figure out how to do it. They just knew they needed to do this. And the organization is still strong and standing today. The LEAT was actively began litigating and protecting communities across Tanzania and had tremendous victories and some other things that, of course, we all need to go through too, some losses along the way. But then they came up against the mining companies. And I believe Dr. Nshala realized that what we needed was not just to keep going up against every single mining company every single time. It was an industry with lots of secrecy and lots of dire impacts for communities. And so he took the time to go back to school and to gain some skills to help him really advocate for fundamental reform of the entire industry. And so he came and studied at Harvard and at Yale, graduating with a Master's of Environmental Management from the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and also a Doctoral of Juridical Studies, an SJD, from Harvard Law School, where he studied the regulatory and tax laws that govern the mining industry in Africa. He did field studies in Tanzania, Ghana, Botswana, and Zambia. And then he went back to LEAD. He's been back in Tanzania for a few years, where he's truly leading the charge in Africa to reform the way that governments interact with mining companies and try and advocate for better protection of the communities and to give the governments and the states a stronger role in managing these projects. Not only is he taking on these industries, but LEAT and Dr. Nshala himself have continued to inspire many other lawyers to create great, strong public interest environmental law organizations across East Africa, across Africa. And Dr. Nshala himself takes the time to really be a mentor for an entire new generation of public interest lawyers across the continent. And I am truly honored to have him for a friend and a colleague and to welcome him up to stage, Dr. Nshala.
Thank you very much, Jen, for a kind introduction. We've known each other from that time, 1994 to today. So I'm really honored that I've been invited here. This is my second keynote address. I think the first one was 2002. So thank you for inviting me, but I've been coming back and forth for so many years. I wanted time to reflect to the first time I came here with my colleague, who's now passed, Vincent Shelby, that was 1995. So we came up here, ILO invited us to attend this public interest environmental conference, and I was seated down there with my colleague. And Professor John Bonner basically told the crowd as you gathered here that there are these two young guys who have founded this organization, but they don't have any funds. So whoever has got money can contribute or can just give them some money. So people from contributed whatever they had. At the end of the day, we had $1,600 US. That's what we started with. That was our first, let's get it, sort of kind of a grant or donation from the generous people of the University of Oregon and those who participated in the PIELC. So once again. So that's my colleague on the other side who has already passed. That's Vincent. Then that's Mina Raman from Malaysia. So, and I was there attending the ILO. I think he went to Mackenzie River. I think they were doing something. Yeah, Lake Triumph. And also, the law school was still down there. Then he was trying to learn how to send our emails. That was my address here. My address in one of the classes, one of the presentations that we made there. And I was making, then my colleague is just, my colleague is there, that's Vincent. So that's what we presented in 1995. And many things have happened. John Bonine, I think this was in Germany last year, but we remember what he did for us that time. Driving by, then Jen here, and Rory, people from Hill, and John is looking intently. Okay, basically I want to talk about the mining industry. Before I do, I think I want to say Happy Women's Day for all the ladies who are here. Quite deserving. I think a lot of strides have been made. I think the state of the women affairs has improved, much as many things need to change, as it was yesterday about the Selma March. But I think progress has been made, but a lot of it needs to be done. I want to talk about the mining industry, mining oil industry in sub-Saharan Africa, because it's a continent that is endowed with a lot of mineral and oil resources. But yet, its people are living in abject poverty. And some people might ask the questions, why is it that the African people cannot take care of themselves, and why each and every time we see pictures which show people, so kids with protruded bellies, and basically people suffering from marasmus, kwashiorkor, and all sorts of poverty diseases. So one of the things that is out of the failure to manage those mineral resources well. The mineral resources are not in the hands of the people who are supposed to be in charge of the benefit from those resources. And for that matter, if you are not extracting them in a manner that is compatible with sustainable development principles, at the end of the day, you're basically not only robbing the current generations, but you're also robbing the future generations. And for that matter, you are not living up to the principle of intergenerational equity. So I thought it's important to address those kind of issues. Why African countries are where they are, and what can we do to change the situation. So when you look at the mining industry in America, I think you know it very well, we are talking about a very, very complex industry. An industry that is much as you have so many subsidiary companies, but is controlled by very, very few companies, which at the end of the day, they make decisions as to who is going to end up with lots of profits. While in subsidiary countries and the countries where those resources are, basically receive paltry sums. So when you look at these mining companies, they are vertically and horizontally integrated. And for that matter, they control all mining operations from, we are talking about the upstream operations and downstream operations. They are vertically and horizontally integrated. And quite often, being that integrated, they are famous for transfer pricing abuses. I'll be talking more about transfer pricing abuses. And you can see when you are talking about from exploration up to final product manufacture, that's a kind of stuff. So when you exploration mining and mining goes are kind of upstream operations. Then downstream operations, you're talking from processing up to final product manufacturing. So when you look at oil, likewise, it's almost the same. Now in America, I think you've managed to find your mojo, and that's why you're saying you're producing more oil yourselves. You're no longer relying to the Gulf states, but basically it's still the same. You are talking about exploration, transport, production, processing, transportation, and marketing. Likewise, those are upstream, midstream, and downstream operations. So when you look at this industry, you have to understand its intricacies in the sense that there are times when you have booms, then there are times when you have busts. Like this time for the oil industry you're talking about is kind of a bust, in the sense that the oil prices have declined tremendously. But other people know that perhaps there will be some recoveries. The prices perhaps might recover and go up. It depends the kind of the demand, and if other forms of energy are not well developed, then the prices might even go higher. So when you look at the mineral industry in the 1970s, the prices basically plummeted. And at the same time, we remember here in America, 1974, the kind of the oily sort of the lines, perhaps people had to line up for fuel. So because the oil prices basically rose up for 400% between November 1973 to January 1974. So on the side of minerals, things were not that rosy, because the 1970s and even the 80s witnessed a dramatic decline of mineral resources. So you come to the 2000s, the prices started going up. But most of the African countries in the 70s had nationalized their mineral resources from the mines from the foreign mining companies. But at the same time, when they made that decision, unfortunately, it was perhaps bad timing. The prices had weakened considerably. For that matter, they did not receive much. But the companies now started saying state-owned mining companies are not suitable to run such kind of an industry. And for that matter, you need private mining companies, because state-owned mining companies are not motivated by profits, but rather they are there to further political aims. And for that matter, they are not they should not be given this kind of the industry should not be in the hands of these companies, because also being in the hands of state-owned mining state-owned companies creates uncertainty in the entire market, because Any investor, any prudent investor will want to see that, to have a sense of certainty in the sense that even in the coming years, the industry will be there. If I invest in that particular industry, I have my shares there. I need to see that the company is also undertaking exploration in other countries, for that its reserves are also on the rise, and not the way the state-owned mining companies operate. So the World Bank had for many years not involved itself or injected itself into the mining industry in Africa for a very long time, but the opportunities that presented themselves in the 1980s with the introduction of structural adjustment programs, that gave it an impetus for it to start operating or even crafting the policies or strategies that will enable itself to have an influence or to influence the policy direction in the extractive industry sector. So from 1986, it influenced Ghana to it used Ghana as a pilot project to see how private-owned mining companies can operate in Africa. And eventually in 1992 it published the Strategy for African Mining, which basically called upon the African countries to liberalize the mining industry, because African countries, it argued, were lagging behind their fellow Latin America, American and Asian countries, in the sense that, and for that matter, they were unable to fight poverty, because they were the kind of laggards, and for that matter, they needed to allow private-owned mining companies to operate in their countries. Why? Because, as I said, state-owned mining companies were not profit motivated. They are not undertaking the necessary exploration activities which are supposed to be which have to go in tandem with the exploitation operations. And for that matter, at the same time, they were unable to receive the required revenues, because their mineral resources were not well developed. Handing them over to private mining companies will allow them now to receive to have the necessary capital that comes from foreign mining companies, technical know-how, and also be part of the globally integrated minerals market. It further argued, but since the African countries had a tainted history, they had to give incentives, they have to give kind of ironclad assurances to foreign mining companies on how they're going to operate there. The kind of incentives that they were supposed to give were basically like generous tax incentives, stable fiscal regime, and they must disavow expropriation. Moreover, they have to sign what they call mineral development agreements that will supplement or even supplant existing mining laws, because the mining laws that were in existence were seen to be to contain the necessary provisions that will assure foreign mining companies to operate in those countries. Moreover, since their courts were not up to the required standards, it was important to provide international dispute settlement in the form of arbitration outside their countries, and for that matter, institutions like the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, which is under the World Bank, and the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris or London, should be the ones that basically are going to adjudicate on those kind of disputes. And for that matter, investors now will feel more than confident to invest in the African countries. So Ghana, as I said, was the country that was used. But eventually, when the strategy was published, more than 40 African countries adopted it. It changed their mining laws, or even repealed some of their laws to basically to go with the advice of the World Bank. As you might know, the World Bank had advised to African countries. Most of the African countries is taken at its face value, and whoever tries to go against it, he will be finding him or herself in big trouble, because the necessary financial loans and assistance support that these countries need will not be forthcoming if the World Bank does not give a clean bill of approval. So you need to have that. So basically,
when the MDAs, when they are signed, they basically ensure that the developing countries or African countries will not change the rules of the game once these companies start operating. In the sense that the laws that were in existence at the time of the investment or when the time the agreement was signed will be the laws that will continue to exist. And if they are changed, cannot be changed to the detriment of the investor, but rather if they are changed, they provide some more beneficial provisions to the company, then those ones can be changed. But otherwise you cannot do that. And again, that's fiscal stability, the taxation rules that were in existence, those will continue. You cannot expropriate, and in case you exercise your eminent domain powers, you decide to go and expropriate, then you have to pay prompt, adequate, and effective compensation. You know, this was a principle, or was a phrase that Secretary Cordell Hall used in 1938 when Mexico nationalized Standard Oil properties. Cordell Hall argued that, yes, states have the right to expropriate subject to the payment of prompt, adequate, and effective compensation. And they say this is a part of the principle of international law. Mexico retorted saying, you have never heard of that. So Mexico basically disagreed, and the Roosevelt administration didn't have much choice. In 1942, basically they decided to give Mexico a package that will enable to pay Standard Oil. Instead of paying over $450 million that Standard Oil, I think now it's ExxonMobil, was demanding, Mexico paid only $25 million, which was basically the aid given by the American government, basically to quiet the Standard Oil. Again, MDAs, they limit discretionary powers of the ministers and the assistants. Again, if you transfer, the right to transfer is there. If you want to assign the investment, you can assign it, but you're not subject to the payment of capital gains. Again, you have because international arbitration, but since they have their own set of rules, they become kind of legal enclaves in the sense that most of the rules or the legislatures of developing countries are prevented from passing laws which will undermine the investment of these companies. So they're more like, if you talk about the principle of equality before the law, that does not apply to these mining and even oil companies for most of the time. And they cover so many other things. You can imagine it's a minister signing on, they deal with taxation, immigration, settlement of disputes, even the waiver of sovereignty. The state cannot use its sovereignty as a defense, because now you have waived it. They talk about exchange control infrastructure, and as Professor Smith and Wells, they say, you don't even, once you see that the MDA, you're looking at the law of that particular investment. You don't need even to go and look at the other laws. That's the law. So most of the time you find it, even in my country, these agreements are not subject to parliamentary ratification, much as the constitution might provide that, but again, they are not taken there. In Kenya, nowadays, you need to have a parliamentary approval, as it is for Ghana, and as it is for Ghana. But in Ghana, members of parliament are given summaries of those agreements, because they are looked at as to be like to contain some trade secrets. And I don't understand what kind of trade secret in the extraction of resources. You're not making Coca-Cola or Pepsi. So the kind of the people that are given the powers to negotiate, you find you don't have a good negotiating mechanism, in the sense that it's a minister who is given the money to negotiate, and instead of having a team of experts and senior civil servants who are trusted to negotiate for that particular, for the behalf of a country, and in case that they don't have the required expertise, then they should be allowed to go and hire those experts wherever they are, because it's kind of you can find those people who are ready to come to the aid of those developing countries. So they even, okay, these are the same time, even much as the minister might have a lot of the wiggle room to maneuver a lot of the discretionary powers, but the NBAs might even, as most of the time, they seek to regulate or even control the exercise of those discretionary powers. So, again, when you look at the kind of the industries which are supposed to oversee the mining investment, even oil investments, you find that most of these institutions are very, very weak. I went to Ghana. You find that they have their own EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. You only have 4 people who are given charge of are supposed to go and review all the EIAs, even look at the mining and oil companies. So what is 4 people can do with if you have like 300 operations in the country? So you are unable to regulate that kind of an industry. And you don't have the good understanding that this particular industry is supposed to be regulated along the value chain. So if you don't have that kind of capacity, you can't do it. So at the end of the day, you find that the industry is vulnerable. Those the government officials who are given the mandate are vulnerable to other manipulations, including corruption. So when we talk about transfer pricing, as I said, you're dealing with a well-integrated industry, in the sense that it's horizontally and vertically integrated. And because, as I said, there are so many other companies. You find a company will come here and say, I'm company X, and then they don't tell you that they're owned by another company. For example, our German colleagues have done a study looking at the operations of the BP. There are over 1,000 companies which are under BP. But when they come here, they come as independents. For that matter, they're not affiliated to BP. So when you see them trading with each other, you might think that they're trading at arm's length. Apparently, that's not the case. So, for that matter, this does not, the prices that a subsidiary company will quote or even tell you how much they've bought the equipment, the capital equipment from another affiliated company in another country. You find that the prices will be jacked up, will be way up. But the minerals that will be selling that particular company will be quite at a lower price. So this company will each and every year declare loss. So for so many years, many mining companies in Africa, even in my country, have been declaring losses. But yet they're expanding the operations. How can you expand your operations 15 years running, yet you're declaring losses? What kind of business venture is that? But that's the case. So, in Sierra Leone, this is a country that we've seen with a lot of now talked about Ebola and so many other things. In 2006, up to 2007, it's the only country that received $10,000 US from its diamonds. How can you fight the poverty with 10,000 US dollars? And you are not told how much money the companies make. And you go to Tanzania, similar. You find the state only received 17 million. How can you fight poverty with 17 million US dollars? While the companies were able to make in over 2.8 billion US dollars. So the former commissioner for minerals in Tanzania said, we have no capacity to look at their books. The companies can let the books so that the third world countries cannot be regulated. Even the contracts are difficult. I think the mining companies exploit our weaknesses in law and capacity. So, much as we say it's a very, very complex country, complex industry, but you find that the mining, so with the transfer pricing, You basically create also these so many companies which will ensure that the revenues that are being paid in these countries are way low. So it's only sometimes you only receive payments in the form of royalty and not a corporate tax. And in Tanzania, there was one company from Australia which operated from 1996. It only paid the corporate tax in the last 2 years of its operation and it closed. And it paid in 2011 and 2012, then it wound up its operations. But, you know, of course, the minerals have been depleted, so you're only left with holes. So you look, in Tanzania we have the oil industry, that's an active. Basically it's almost like when you look at the mining industry, the minister is given the powers to negotiate what they call production sharing agreements. These are, they came up into being in the sense that after the passage of the Principle of Permanent Sovereignty over Natural Resources in 1962, Resolution 1803 of the United Nations. So many developing countries thought that now they've been able to assert their powers or their right over their natural resources. So the first PSA was signed by Indonesia. It was signed by Indonesia, basically saying now the state minerals will now remain the property of the state, but now you are given the right to produce, and there will be two types. There will be what is called cost oil, basically will help the company pay for its for the cost that it incurred in the exploration and even in the exploitation. Then there will be profit oil, which will be shared by the state and by the company. So most of the time, if a PSA is well negotiated, you find that the state will take more money from out of the profit oil. So the percentages might go even up to 80%. But in some other African countries, you find the profit oil, the state will end up with perhaps 50 or 40. Then still the company will make more money. So, but again, the problems that you see, the way the PSAs are being negotiated, you find that they're not negotiated with well-constituted teams of experts and civil servants able to match the capacity or the expertise that is within the industry. At the same time, even the drafts for those agreements come from the oil companies. And for that matter, for you, you only start looking at the document. You are looking at where the grammatical mistakes and the other things. You change this comma, put it there, and instead of having the substantive agenda that will ensure that a developing country is the primary beneficiary of any exploitation or extraction of its oily resources. So that's the kind of problems. So you have Tanzania, we have what we call Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation. So far we haven't discovered oil, but we have a lot of gas reserves, and now we are extracting or exploiting our gas. But again, when you look at the agreement, it's not that in the liking or in the best interest of the country. So I talked about the whole doctrine, that's a fight with Mexico, again with the kind of institutions that we have. Now, after so many years in Africa, from 1992 up to 2007, many people were complaining that Africa has been shortchanged and that the World Bank has not lived up to its vision of a world free of poverty. And in fact, the World Bank has been part and parcel of exacerbating poverty. So in Zambia, people have done a lot of studies showing that mining companies were profiting a lot from its copper minerals. So the World Bank argued, said, okay, perhaps the kind of agreements that were signed were not in the best interest of Zambia. Basically, they were geared to, those agreements were signed to revive a declining industry. But the Zambian people have paid a high price in terms of foregone public revenues that have been invested in public services and infrastructure. So if you give a bad advice and somebody suffered, if you're talking about having a fiduciary duty, what has the World Bank now tried to do basically to try to ensure that these countries, perhaps the damage that it caused to these countries is rectified. That was not the case. Okay, we say, okay, in the future we're going to ensure that we're not going to repeat the same kind of mistakes. That's a particular standard response from the World Bank. Any mistake that is done, or is caused, or damage that is caused on these countries, the World Bank will not only that kind of mistake, but rather will say, yes, lessons have been learned. We are going to ensure that next time we are not going to repeat those kind of mistakes. So future projects will not be so poorly informed. But it's up to those countries, because you're a sovereign nation, you have each and every right to accept or decline or refuse our advice. So I talked about much as in Tanzania we have the right to, our parliament has got the power to ratify, but most of the time, most of the Tanzanian government has refused to take all those agreements before the parliament for ratification. So I talked about ratifying. So there are these important, what they call fiscal stability. When you look at the MDAs and the PSAs, the fiscal stability clauses, basically, as I said, a state will not be allowed to change the laws that were in existence at the time of signing of the agreement, unless those changes are to the benefit of the company. So, an investor is treated more favorably than the other people in that particular country. So, you have international arbitration, you go there, then sovereignty. As I said, you also have to waive sovereignty in the sense that each and every state has a right to invoke the sovereignty defense in international arbitration. But with the signing of these PSAs, and they also, if you are part of the Convention for International Settlement of Investment Disputes, the ICSI, basically, once you have you have signed it, and you have also said you have signed an agreement saying that I'm waiving my sovereignty defense, then that's the case most of the time. So a state is now reduced to be like a normal person that is being sued, but is now sued at the international level. So you have, like in Ghana, you find there's an American company called Newmont that is operating there. It has formed in different subsidiaries, but Newmont even demanded that much as the Ghanaian government might try to comply with any law, that basically is not in the best interest of the company, and the company suffers. Then the Ghanaian government will have to compensate Newmont for that particular law, for adherence to that particular law. So basically, even if you are there, this MDA or the PSA will make you to be liable. So you can see basically the government is prevented from even breaching its own law. When it breaches its own law, that one is allowed. So if there's any commitment that the Ghanaian government agreed with the company, much as that particular commitment is in violation of the Ghanaian law, then the Ghanaian government will have to compensate the company. Basically, we know that contracts are not supposed to be in violation of any law, but you see the PSAs and MDAs, if they were not well negotiated, they might even trump principle, the pieces of legislation, even the constitution, as it is the case in Ghana. Then you have the right to assign. If the company decides to sell its assets, then the government should not prevent it from selling or transferring those particular assets or investments. Then I talked about international arbitration. That's what it is. So, in case the tribunal issues an award in favor of any of the companies or all of them, then they shall be exempt from any taxation. Now, assume a company has won. Perhaps Ghana nationalized the assets of Newmont. And Newmont, because it invoked the principle, the whole doctrine that it is supposed to be compensated for loss of future profits, then now that profit will not be subject to taxation. I think. Okay. So I talked about sovereignty, agreement trumps the constitution. It's important when you look at these stability clauses, the way they are, according to World and George D, that when you look at these stability clauses, they make their metaphor are one way of reducing investment risk, especially political risks. But I think the most important thing, this is from when you sign this kind of agreements, a state is basically saying or acknowledging that it's not a full-fledged state, but rather it's a state that is constituted by fledgling institutions, and for that matter, it's a quasi-state. That's what Robert Jackson, a leading international law expert, said. They are quasi-state in the sense that the other trappings of being a state are there, but in actual fact, they're basically saying we don't have well-run institutions, and for that matter, we don't manage our affairs as it is required. So, and there are other principles that you sign. Even if you sign a good agreement in favor of one company, with the principle of most favorable treatment and the most favorable nation principle, you have, for that matter, those kind of incentives that you have given to one company also accrue to other companies which are in that particular country. And so I would just say these are kind of productions which increase in Africa, but the amount of revenues that went to these African countries are way too low. You can see in Ghana, in Zambia, even in Tanzania, production has increased 1,000 times, but the amount of revenue that has accrued to those countries have been way too low. And so you can see that amount Zambia received that amount of revenue from its copper industry. When it was state-owned, in 1992, it received $200 million. With the same amount of production, in 2004, it only received 238 US dollars. So, $230,000 US dollars, which means nothing has changed. Botswana is an example that we have to look up to, because it's a country that took a different trajectory and it benefited a lot from its mineral resources. So African countries need to learn from Botswana and the other countries which have exploited their mineral resources so well. I haven't talked about the experience of the Arab nations, what happened after the establishment of OPEC, and more so from the 1970s when they were able to assert their sovereignty over their oil resources, which changed their fortunes, and now at least they are wallowed with the petrodollars, and they have been able to change their economies to a higher level. So it's important that if you're going to exploit these resources, you must make sure that they're exploited for the benefits of the people of those countries. Otherwise, it's not important. We better leave them resources in the ground, because leaving them in the ground, they won't rot. And the other sectors of the economy won't be affected, because I didn't talk about the Dutch disease. When you have the oil industry or the mineral industry, if it's not well regulated and managed, it kills other sectors of the economy, like agriculture and other things, which basically make these countries start importing food, like the way Nigeria now imports over 90% of its food from outside, while it was a self-sufficient country. So I thank you very much, and I thank all the people who have invited me.
Thank you so much for coming to PIELC 2015, and we hope to see you next year. Thank you.